Hello everybody, hey, welcome to the Sacred Masculinity podcast, even though we're videoing it, but you can hear it as well. My name's harvery-hall, we've got Ian Johnson right next to me, we've got Damien Cornford, and the illustrious...
Mr. Waters.
Yeah, Mr. Nathan Waters, the illustrious Mr. Nathan Waters is in the etheric plane somewhere else, isn't he? I think he's doing some mountain biking or something like that.
No, he's going to a weekend hut retreat.
Weekend hut retreat. Okay, cool.
At Crystal Creek.
Beautiful.
That he goes to with his soccer mates every year.
Ah, okay. All right. So he said he was going to be with us in the non-physical, in the spirit, so one of us might channel him today, so you never know.
Shotgun knock.
That's right. It's the person who takes their shirt off, basically.
I just did before. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Today I wanted to bring in the conversation around ego and sitting in the sacred masculinity space where, you know, the essence of what we're bringing to males and females, humanity, is this combination of divine masculine and divine feminine. And bringing that into this space, especially in a male role and in a male body, we find a lot of resistance to feminine, divine feminine. And a lot of people want to just tap into, well, I'm just going to be divine masculine, you know, and this is who I am, and I need to push away this femininity because it actually weakens me. And it was interesting because that sort of screamed to me like the ego was appearing. So it's an interesting conversation, and so I guess I just wanted to bring, well, what is the ego to you? Because it's used in so many ways. You know, you've got Sigmund Freud talk about, you know, the ego, the super ego, and then the ID. That sort of
ego,
thing.
super ego, yeah.
Yeah, so it's thrown around and used in many ways. Eckhart Tolle talks about the ego.
The Bible talks about the Holy Trinity as basically the same principle.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I guess I just wanted to bring that conversation, and I really like the law of ones and a perspective of the role of the ego, and also Aaron Abke in the way that he explains it, who explains it just so well. And there's probably a lot of stuff that I'm probably just going to plagiarise off him, but at least I'm acknowledging
you are.
before
Yes.
plagiarise.
Put a little thing down the bottom.
That's right.
Maybe we can get him to be on our podcast.
We could do that.
What a coup.
Could do that. Hey.
That'd be cool. We should put it out to
we
him.
can set up a Zoom with that.
We'll just keep hashtag Aaron Abke.
Yeah,
actually,
that's right.
these dudes.
Cool. Yeah. So, Damien, what are your thoughts around the ego? What is it? Is it useful? Is it detrimental? Can we transcend it? Do we need to transcend it?
Yes, no, yes.
All right, cool. Thanks, Ian.
Can I have the questions again? Are you done? Right, so you can go.
So, ego, yes, it's useful. Do we need to transcend it? No. I think that it also comes down to your perception of what the ego is and how you incorporate that. So, some people would say the ego is part of the reptilian mind, which is all about survival. So in that form, it has a place in your life. Does that mean you need to transcend it? Well, no, it's more about, I don't want to say challenging it, but more so training it to move past those survival mechanisms that might be limiting you from reaching a higher planes of existence, to allowing it then to keep you in survival here in this physical form, and allowing them to change the parameters in which the ego is holding space for, so then you can shift to, as I said before, like great expressions of yourself. So say, for example, if my ego might have parameters about behavioral parameters about survival, which say, when I'm in public, don't talk about these things. Mm-hmm. I only talk about these things in private with friends. And so then it's a limiting belief which is put in place to help my survival, though is it really helping me? Well, yes and no. it might have been helping me as my childhood until I got to teenage years, and then those parameters then are shifted because I'm living now in a safe place. I'm an adult now, but talking about this in my own household might have been detrimental at the time. My father might have exploded. It would have been, I'm just saying examples. Would have hit me, and I would have had issues. So then now I'm out of that situation. My ego now has no place in that parameter. I can now shift it and create a new plane of existence for my self-expression. That's just one example, I guess, of many different forms. Can I say then my ego is helpful? Yes, because it's allowed me to continue on living. I guess let's start there.
Okay, so
But you might say then, we might also say then, if I'm sitting in my ego, so let's say perspective that someone's always speaking from the ego, I am this, I am that. So some people might come from an egoic point of view of service to self rather than service to others. And that might have been a mechanism they've used their whole life as a principle to get ahead. And when some people have then that parameter will shift to service to others, then that obviously then is a different parameter of living as well compared to service to self. So yeah, neither one is good nor bad, service to self or service to others. They're all part of the one experience, as we all know.
Yes.
Through the law of one.
Yeah.
Is service to others maybe a faster path to a greater experience of higher consciousness? Well, from the teachings of Law of One, yes, it's a path of least resistance. And I guess that's why our inert nature in life really is to be of service to others. And when people are more service to self, we're a lot of people have a bit of resistance there or want to guide them back to service to others. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Yes, I followed.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I followed you really well.
Your body language is saying something else.
There's an incongruence with that. Yeah, no,
Yes.
I got
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Good question. Can you ask them again?
So I guess, what is the ego? Does it, I guess in the what is it, is there a purpose to it? And Daniel was saying, well, it's an evolutionary survival mechanism. Does it have value? Yes, it does have value because it does keep you safe. How does it maybe not have value? Can we transcend it? Do we need to transcend it? That sort of.
So drawing on some of my psychology training and other stuff, when we're all born, we are considered tabula rasa, so blank, which is not necessarily true if we talk about the spiritual, energetic stuff. But when babies are born, they only really have a couple of fears. One is like that dropping. And so in the first 7 years of our lives, and if you listen to...
It's got detergent in it.
Someone's frothing. I'll pass. And Bruce Lipton talks about for the first 7 years, you're basically just a sponge. You're walking around in that theta state, absorbing stuff. So then what is implanted into you is the programming of your environment and experiences. And so in terms of that, I think that becomes our subconscious, which is really a lot of what our ego is the programming that is installed. So like Damien was saying, some of those things that happened to him as a child, or your experiences with your father, or the lack of food or whatever.
So cause and effect, really.
So the ego is, and that is created within you to not only to survive, as a survival mechanism. And so that's why as you get older, you get, even though you can be conscious of stuff, if you haven't dealt with the subconscious programming, then the ego kicks in. And then if you look at the stuff Joe Dispenza talks about, then what happens is that ego trains the body, and that becomes the ego. The body is the mind.
Yes.
That is the subconscious. And so you will automatically feel that body, and then when you step outside of your ego, the body then goes, hang on, that's not what where's our flood of drugs? What's happening here? Why are you doing what we normally do? So consciously you might be going, this is what I want to do. Your brain has now been trained to the subconscious. Let's go, hang on, let's go this way.
Through that feedback loop.
Yeah, because you become, to survive in this world, there's a lot of stuff we do automatically. And so that's part of that survival thing. Okay, I learn how to drive a car and it becomes automatic and you don't have to think about it. If we had to think about everything we had to do, okay, breathing, walking, talking, whatever, every second of our life, you'd be overwhelmed. So the subconscious and the ego takes over that stuff. And part of that growing up phase is training that ego for survival, basically, is survival. Yeah. So is it healthy? It can be, yeah. It can be, obviously, you know, I've got to run away from the wolf. Or I hear a growling over in the corner. It's not a time to sit and go within. It's a time to, let's get the hell out of there. The guy's got a bloody glass bottle to your face. Not that it happened to me, I don't know why that example came up. So, you know, the ego, for that survival purposes, is correct. I mean, even in that situation we've had this week.
Yes. Some
of that was our egos going,
definitely,
I don't like this.
Yeah, we need
I want to protect myself. Yeah. So, in that essence, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Can we transcend it? I think ultimately that is the goal. Looking at law of one is to go to pure love, or to not even have emotions. From what I understand, from what I was reading about the non-dualistic stuff the other day, that's the path down there where everything is just one. It's all happening.
We can still have emotions. It's the attachment to the emotion.
That's
so we're transcending.
So in this form here we are now, ego is good. So I think it's maybe about having a healthy ego, as opposed to what we've seen this week with unhealthy ego. But it's also being about aware of it. Like we could see, you know, you and I, not that I'm bragging, but we were kind of aware of how our own egos were playing into that, and we were listening to it and saying, okay, what's going on here?
We can inquire into it.
Yeah. We're aware, okay, is this mine? We're calling it. But from the other aspect, there was no awareness. Or real lack of awareness from what I could see. And I think you're seeing the same thing. So I think this healthy ego and really being aware that you have an ego and how it impacts on your day to day. And I think that's part of that, becoming aware of what's happened in your past that makes you who you are today. And you can't transcend that ego until you are aware of that stuff. I think that's what happened for me. It was really becoming aware of like, okay, well, why am I picking these relationships? Okay, well there it is. That's why, because that was the programming that was put in there, and now I'm replicating that. But but that can be a weird thing because you're picking stuff, but then you're not feeling safe. But maybe back in that situation you didn't feel safe. But the ego goes, I need my hit of drugs. I need that because
this is how I used to get it.
That's how I used to get it. And let's do it again, even though it doesn't.
No, it doesn't make sense.
It's a weird stiff. No,
Let's just clarify, when you say drugs, you're not meaning.
No, not drugs. I mean your natural. Neurochemicals. Yeah. Sorry, thank you. Yeah.
But you are the biggest drug factory on the planet.
Exactly. We're a bag of chemicals.
That's exactly right.
And this is our spacesuit. I heard someone call it the spacesuit. Oh, that is so cool. I'm going to Greek people now going, how's your spacesuit treating you today?
Not so good. So what I'm hearing you say is, so the ego is good for survival. So say for the kid that your parents go, don't touch that hot stove, you go touch the hot stove and you have that experience of like, okay, I'm not touching that again.
Yeah, you learn through experience, and that's why letting kids have mistakes is a good thing, because they learn.
So then on the other aspect then is having self-awareness through the contrast of experiences through life has allowed you then to have awareness of what's supporting your journey and what's not.
Yeah.
And then you've been able to, let's say, transcend those limiting belief systems that dysfunctional life patterns you had to live in a greater expression of yourself.
Yes.
Through greater expression of yourself towards a greater love.
Well, I guess then obviously then what happens if you're starting to transcend that subconscious ego, you're going to the superconscious and you're living from spirit, or whatever we want to use, and then you're speaking from that higher position rather than coming from that egoic voice, which I mean you could say that's probably what light language is. You're connecting to the superconscious, and that's just coming through.
Yes.
I mean, and sometimes I've sat with people and all of a sudden just stuff starts coming out and you talk to them and you go, where the fuck did that come from? And it's a different feel from ego. It's just like, I think, like you said, there's no attachment to what you're saying. I have no fear of what I'm saying to them, and I have no attachment to what impact it's going to have on them. It's just, and you're like, I think it happened this week with someone. I went, well, I did, but it just happened. And like, that's okay, man.
I think it's important to clarify that as well.
Just cool, that's what you're here for.
Is that it's coming from a place, the intention behind it is a place of love.
Yes.
First and foremost.
Yes.
It's not just an intention of, I must tell you this.
No,
It's not from ego, it's more like intention of like, I'm here to love myself and honor myself and share my journey, but also as well in that presence, communicate with love to you and honor you in that experience you're going through at the moment as well.
So, a couple of things that you're both sort of picking up on and suggesting is that the ego is the intrinsic safety mechanism that keeps people alive. Something that I'd probably like to challenge in that is, and listening to Aaron Abke saying that that isn't necessarily the ego. So when through our instincts, this is an instinctive programming. So that's not the ego. The ego, in essence, is the one that says, I am the one who keeps you safe. So now there's an identity. And so the ego was formed through self-awareness. So as we were, evolving from chimps and apes and in smaller groups, and the way that we communicated with each other was, the basic language. We then started to give each other, I am, you are. So that's where then the ego started to create an identity. And the identity is a safety mechanism that is not necessarily related to the reptilian part of the brain, which keeps you, threat or opportunity, that sort of thing.
Yeah, cool.
So we've got this base running, but then the ego says, I am the one who keeps you safe. And then it creates its own value because in a sense it's only it's a programming, it's a construct. But we needed to create an identity because what was then happening is, as in small tribes, there was no one leading the tribe. When someone steps up to be a leader, then they identify themselves as I am the leader. And so through the evolutionary perspective, we needed the evolution of self-awareness, we needed the evolution of the ego to then create identity. Identity then created, I guess, a greater safety within the tribe. And now we've got the tribe who then has its own identity. So we've got this cumulative ego. This tribe, and so then through the mechanisms of the mind, it's going, this tribe looks different to this tribe. We need to, is it a threat or an opportunity? They want to come in and hurt us, so now we need to attack. And then we get this, very much fight or flight situation. The ego then hops on that and says, right, we're going to take over your tribe because we are more powerful. So it's once again, here's this identity. We need to grow bigger. We're growing bigger because we need to stay safer. So the evolution of the ego actually happened through third density. Up until that time, second density didn't need it. But coming into third density, and this is where we're at now, moving into fourth density, we're getting to the point where now the ego is becoming redundant. Right? So it's got us to where we're at, and very much that'll keep you in the yellow ray, in the solar plexus ray, solar plexus chakra, which is power over. So the ego loves to have power over something because it identifies as something. As we're moving up into the green ray, the heart chakra, this represents union. So I don't need to have power over anybody. I actually don't need to continue to identify myself as separate. And that's what the ego does. It creates a separateness. Now, in that particular time, it was really important. There was great value for the ego to create separateness because we need to grow. And look at the Industrial Revolution, look at capitalism. This is all egoic.
For sure.
And it has great value. But when we then start to identify ourselves as one race versus another race, one political party versus another political party, even genders, so that's this egoic perspective. And that creates further separation. But as we move into the fourth density, according to the law of one, we're moving into the heart ray where we're starting to see others as other selves. When we see another as another self, I am in unity with that. You are the same as me. You come from the same body.
Yep.
Then I don't need the mechanism of the ego to create further separation.
Yep.
I actually don't need the mechanism of the identity. And when we look at identity, what hats am I wearing? The job that I wear. I am the father. I am the son. I am the the cousin. I am the leader. I am the guru.
Yeah.
I am spiritually enlightened.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. And then we hold on to that. And as Aaron Abke says, the language of the ego is through guilt. I'm either the perpetrator or the victim. But the way that the ego speaks to others when the ego is challenged, it automatically defends. It defends, and it defends by trying to boost its identity. This is who I am. This is who I've been with. This is who I work with. This is the stuff that I've done.
What we saw.
Yeah. And I'm defending. So in no way, and it was interesting that you were saying that it wasn't allowing itself to look back on itself, because if it did allow itself to look back on itself, it would then see the shadow part. Yeah. And that's too much of a threat to the ego, and then the ego wants to then keep itself alive.
Wants to keep itself safe. Yeah.
Keep itself safe.
Yeah.
The other side of it too is when we talk about intuition. Intuition. Intuitively, we were picking up on something, but the ego can then go, I thought of that. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's where intuition hijacks, the ego hijacks intuition.
Yeah.
Because the ego can only borrow from reality.
Yeah.
Ego doesn't actually have its own reality. It is only a construct. The true reality is that you are soul, you are consciousness. You are infinite intelligence. That is the true reality. The ego will borrow that reality and then call it its own.
Yep.
That's the delineation that we need to become aware of.
Isn't there a little bit of separation in that? Because ego is still consciousness.
Well, everything is consciousness.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So there still would be part of the law of one.
And of course it is. And we're not saying it's bad, but we're just saying that it's a tool that's becoming redundant. So as
it's
it becomes,
not serving us.
it doesn't serve. It's like I went to my cupboard the other day. I had some new clothes, but I couldn't put it in there because I had all these old clothes. I need to get rid of the old clothes because they no longer serve me. They did serve me at that particular time, and I thank them for that. But they don't serve me anymore. Take them out, and I'll put my new clothes in.
Yeah, I've noticed you started copying me.
That's exactly right. I've been following you on Insta. I want to look like that guy. My identity wants to be like his.
So then, okay, let me ask some questions then. Okay, a couple of things are arising for you in that. For me in that. When you still look at 6th, 7th, 8th density constructs, there is still a talk of a unique expression within those social memory complexes within that.
Yes.
So is that unique expression part of the ego that's softened? Or, because they still have names.
Yes.
So then what's the difference between my ego as not saying my ego's offended. It might be.
What's it called?
Damien?
But now, cool, anyway. Cool name.
Is that not my unique expression here in this lifetime? As a consciousness construct of this earthly plane we're in right now?
My ego's confused.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yes, you just said no a second ago. Well, that makes sense.
Well, in this construct it is, because you have an ego.
But when you're the collective group, that name applied to
But
everyone?
we are in a collective consciousness, right?
Yeah, but you don't acknowledge yourself as the collective. You acknowledge yourself as Damien in the collective. There's the separation.
But when you speak, let's say Ra, he acknowledges himself or itself.
He just uses that to explain himself to us. Yeah. Otherwise, we wouldn't understand.
He's a social memory complex.
It's the same as what they talk about Abraham Hicks.
But I've heard in there talk about is a unique expression within that social memory complex.
But he doesn't have an identity as such. He's still a unique expression, but you don't have to have an identity. And also think too, that they're speaking in a way that we can understand.
Yeah.
Because we can't necessarily go, oh well, how can you be a unique expression but then still be part of a social memory complex? aren't you just everything? Yes, I am both. See,
and that's what I'm seeing my ego as. Yes, I am both. So it's a unique expression here this lifetime, and the reason why it's so separate is because we're in a physical form. Yet when we surpass the physical form through light language, or let's say we're meditating together and we go within, my physical form disappears, and then I'm uniting once again within the mind construct or the consciousness of the less parameters of being in the body and opening up more. So I guess for me, what I'm trying to say is that ego maybe is a localized form of consciousness that's allowing this expression to have the experience, the contrast in which God is here to have as a Godhead or source. And it's that form that allows that expression to take place. So in that uniqueness then, it's given a name, it's given, platforms to live upon this earth, because obviously being on this earth, we need then some kind of situation to perform duties or have those contrasts. So there's obviously, through the collective consciousness here, we've obviously created a system like money, jobs, all these different things, being in partnerships that allow those kind of expressions of self to play out.
Yeah, but are you those things though?
Well, good question. If I was talking from a place of consciousness, yes, I'm all of them.
Do you identify them as them?
No, you usually identify.
If I go into my heart, yes, it kind of tells me that I'm like, it's everything. I'm part of that all-inclusive consciousness, having this experience. Yeah. But obviously then, there's this body speaking right now,
sure.
And there's this consciousness having this experience. But...
So I like to look at what is not permanent and what is permanent. Whatever is not permanent is a construct of the mind. Whatever is permanent is what true reality is.
So for you, what's permanent?
So my permanence is my essence. Everything else is a passing phase.
But doesn't this have essence then, and that's part of you as well?
Yeah. And then also...
In what way?
Well, everything, unless you're saying this is a video game and that's just virtual reality, but everything is energy and everything has its essence. Like that's the second density.
But it's so as much as this is here and it's we can look at it as through the illusion of solidity.
Yeah.
It can still, so we call it a table, but is it a table?
Oh, no.
No,
well, we
it's
don't
not.
know. That's just the name we've given
That's
it.
a name that we've given it. So see, we identify.
I see what you're saying now.
Right, so in this density, it's important to have the ego because it identifies things. It goes, well, that's a table and that's a chair.
Yep.
But are they different?
So
is that chair different to this table?
Yeah.
What is the role of that chair?
It's just energy vibrating at a different rate.
So
it decided it wanted to be a chair
at
some point.
Well, we put it in the form of that and we gave it a purpose.
Through creation.
Through creation, which is fine. And I'm not saying that you are not the ego, but it's about becoming aware that it's a tool. It's not who you are. And if I identify with what I am not, then I create separation from what I actually am.
But if I can surpass that...
Yes, that's where the transcendence comes.
Surpass the separation between the ego and the conscious self, that's what I'm saying, then I can transcend that limiting belief of separation through the ego.
The ego creates the limiting belief of separation. Consciousness doesn't, because everything abides in consciousness. There is no separation. Consciousness is just consciousness.
Yeah, so that means my ego is just consciousness as well.
Of course it is. Yeah, it's a part of consciousness. It's a part.
A unique expression of.
What's
an experience for to set up healthy boundaries.
Yes.
So there's been an opening that none of us have seen, and then it's gone. The universe has come in. Okay, well here's something that's going to come in through that opening.
Yes.
You've got a choice now to let that keep happening, or you can say, okay, well that's not really healthy. We close the doors.
Yes.
And this is a safer place now for that experience.
Yeah,
so thank you very much.
So there was a crack.
Yeah.
And then it became apparent. and we were all able to pick up on the entity entering the crack. And
let's not use the word entity. Let's use person, because that's what
person.
it is.
Yeah,
The energy.
person.
Yeah,
Energy.
Person. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then able to then set some healthy boundaries around that as well.
Mm.
So let's talk about that actually quickly. We've got 5 minutes in regards to actual people that are setting up circles or are actually in a workplace. What's a way in which they can communicate with someone to set up healthy boundaries? What's the way?
I was thinking about this today, and my father's a social worker, and one of the best ways, and I was thinking about it, was that instead of saying like Terry, you do this, it's you identify the behaviour. You go, I don't like just cut. I said the name or cut that.
So start from social work.
The thing that so my dad was a social worker, and he taught us that it's not so much the person who you have the issue with, it's their behaviour. So if I was to have a conversation with that person, I'm going to say it again, I would say, I don't like your behaviour, I don't like the things that I'm seeing, so I'm owning it, and in this case I would say, I don't like your energy. Or I don't like the energy I'm feeling, so it's not putting on them, so it's not attacking them, so it's all I'm owning it. And I would say, and this is my boundaries, and for this situation, I'd say, I don't like that in my space, and so respect my boundaries and stay out of it.
Yeah, and I think too, the way that we approached it was we honoured the person and we thanked the person for the interactions that we had because it revealed something within us. So thank you for bringing this to me, because now I can see this stuff within me. As much as I can honour that, it doesn't mean then that I ignore the behaviour that's being expressed.
Well, if you did, you wouldn't be honouring yourself, would you?
That's exactly right. So then in honouring myself, I'm going to go, hey, this is what we're noticing. And for our situation, it was intuitively I was picking up on something, Ian was picking up on something, and you were also picking up on something, which then gave, and then other people, which then gave us a bit of an accumulative questioning, going, well, maybe there is something here, which is a beautiful thing, because what it's shown me is that, well, honour yourself, Maurice, and trust your intuition.
Yeah, that's one of the big lessons.
Thank you.
Also as well, you're supported.
And we're supported, so that was a beautiful thing too. And then we in a sense tried to, I guess, talk about what it was that we were feeling. Now, in that case there, we were, I guess, in a sense, giving, as much as we were thanking for the healing opportunity for us, we were also providing a healing opportunity for the other person to see through our feedback what could be potentially healed within that person. What transpired then was that person's choice to either take it as feedback or defend. And what we found was there was a very large egoic attachment to defending and avoiding and trying to manufacturing particular things there. So we continue to bring it back. But I think from a circle perspective, I think that if you're going to create a circle, that you have a core group that is aligned, and you speak that out, and you stay in communication as we do, and the core group has alignment. There's heart coherence, and we're all on the same page in service to others, and all on the same page into honouring self and into reflecting into self. So, there's a great wealth of experience and knowledge that can come from that.
We do a bit of this,
Yeah, and we walk alongside each other and we support each other, and I think that's the key in creating a circle.
That was the beautiful thing for it. I think that was it. It was like a challenge for us to set up this kind of stuff. So hey, we haven't done this. We've all just been organically going along.
Hey, we're joining. This is
fun.
Cool. Let's catch up.
And that was like, hey, okay, well, you need to maybe be a bit more solid in what we're doing.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing for me was also I was then able to thank past relationships for showing me this, because I was like, wow, if I hadn't had those experiences before, then I wouldn't have been able to pick up on what was happening then as well. So that was really good. That was a really good thing for me. I sat there and went, wow, thank you was other than
That
my
was happening
exes.
for me.
Yeah, my exes and all that sort of stuff. I was like, fantastic. That was really, and like I said, it was beautiful. I was just sitting there watching you talk, and I was in awe. I was like, that was fucking brilliant. The words that were coming out, I'm like, wow, I wish I could say that.
Yeah, no, and then I was looking at you and going, oh, good pickup. Yeah, nice. Really appreciate that because I didn't see it.
So that's quite encouraging for people out there having this experience. So let's just recap that a little bit. So there's an honouring, and then there's talking from a place in which you're taking responsibility for your part.
Definitely.
But then also sharing how that's made you feel. And then allowing an invitation for them then to either step forward or step back. So I just want to alliterate that because a lot of people have issues with conflict. And it's really important then, at that point then, you've set up a boundary. And for a lot of people then, it can either be they're scared of losing that person. So I think it's always important to say, well, you give them the choice then to either step closer to you or step further away. And in that, if they step further away or closer to you, that's up to them. That's their choice. But also, the most important thing is you've honoured the boundaries you've set up. Plus, you've also honoured yourself, which is saying to yourself, I love myself and I appreciate myself. But in doing that, I love and appreciate you as well as another self.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, exactly.
Powerful stuff.
Powerful stuff.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in, listening. Notice what was arising for you through these conversations because we do go out there as well as going inward as well. So, really thanking you for investing your time and your presence and your energy in listening to these podcasts and these conversations. We would really enjoy any comments, any feedback that you've got, and we would certainly love to interact with that as well too. So, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.